Laudetur Jesus Christus. Praised be Jesus Christ. I'd like to welcome all of you to this live broadcast. Our Holy Father will soon be meeting with the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionics of the Catholic University, Peter Pazmany. We see him getting out of the car right now in front of the building here. Pope Francis, on his third day of his 41st apostolic journey, this time to Hungary. From wherever you're joining us, I'd like to welcome you to this live broadcast. We know many of you joining us through various Vatican media channels, perhaps the Vatican News app or the Vatican Radio app, the Vatican News English web portal, our Vatican News English YouTube channel, or our Facebook live feed. To those of you tuning in through television, welcome to all of you picking us up through Catholic TV. Our Holy Father kissing a baby right now. That's why we hear the applause. Welcome all of you tuning in through Catholic TV at Madarshan TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks, EWTN, Uganda Catholic Television, Salt and Light Media, Shalom TV, Sunday Shalom, and to all of our radio listeners out there, especially those of you tuning in through Luminous Radio or through our shortwave radio broadcast. And we know many others are picking us up through local diocesan and radio channels. As I said, this is the Pope's third and final day here in Hungary. This morning he celebrated Mass. Local authorities estimated that about 50,000 people participated in that Mass, 30,000 of whom were in Kossuth Lajos Square. Our Holy Father now entering the faculty here. He was greeted at the door by the rector and also the dean of the faculty. We'll be hearing a greeting, some testimonies. The Pazmany Peter Catholic University is private, founded in 1635. It gets its name from Archbishop Peter Pazmany, who established the Faculty of Theology in what was then the Kingdom of Hungary, in a place now in Slovakia. Nearly 8,000 students attend the university. We're at the Faculty of Computer Science and Bionics. It's a unique faculty in Hungary and even in Europe in that it combines the study of electrical and computer engineering with molecular and neural biology and medicine. We'll hear now an address, a greeting by Monsignor Geza Kuminets, who is the rector of the university. Holy Father, it is a special honor for our university, which despite having a history of almost 400 years, celebrates in this academic year the 30th anniversary of its founding after the fall of communism, as well as for the other ecclesiastical and secular academic institutions present here today, that the Vicar of Christ finds worthy of attention and of his personal presence, the representatives of the university's culture, teaching, and research work as a sign of the important role of science, not only in ecclesiastical life, but also in social life. In our Catholic universities, we seek to grasp the ideal seeds of the Creator and Savior God hidden in creation and revelation, and to categorize them according to the holistic conception of truth that characterizes the Catholic ideal of science. This was the common sense from its very beginning. Then the positive sciences, philosophy, theology, and mysticism, its fulfillment is the beatific vision of God. In every true scientist, therefore, there is something of the scribe, the priest, the prophet, and the mystic. True faith and true knowledge are thus born allies, pillars, one of each other. With the help of science, We not only want to understand, we also want to do the right thing. That is to build a humane and supportive civilization, a sustainable culture and environment. It is with a humble heart that we can climb not only the mountain of the Lord, but also the mountain of science. Holy Father, so that we may continue to fruitfully build our university, cultivate science, and enrich culture, we ask and await your guidance and encouragement. The greeting of the rector of the university, Monsignor, who is also a professor, Gaetza Kuminets. Now greeting the Holy Father and taking his seat. And now we'll hear from a professor. His name is Balázs Major. He's an associate professor here at the Institute of Archaeology. Holy Father, as followers of Christ, part of our mission is to promote dialogue and creative coexistence among relations and civilizations. As a university of the Catholic Church, we must do all this within our means, research and education. Our university carries out considerable international cooperation, especially with Middle Eastern countries. Not only does it run joint research programs, but it also welcomes and trains dozens of students from that region. Their education at our institution is supported by the Hungarian government through the Hungaricum Stipendium and scholarship program for Christian young people. I am convinced that our work should pay special attention to those who are in a most difficult and destitute condition, since a significant part of our ancient Christian heritage is now in areas made unstable by conflict and international politics. It is important for us to save it and help it survive. Our university, and within it the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences, of which I am Vice Dean for External Affairs, is making this a priority. As a result, our faculty is focusing on Syria, a country affected by war and other major disasters, and on working with the country's institutions, colleagues, and students. Syria is one of the cradles of Christianity. Our neighbors, including our Christian brothers and sisters in the East who are now living in conditions of great suffering, need all the help they can get. We are trying to assure them with our field work in Syria and the education of Syrians in Hungary. In the spirit of preserving Christian heritage, our faculty is committed to researching the legacy of one of the oldest Christian peoples, the Armenians, and teaching their culture through Armenian studies. As Catholic Christians, we must never forget our neighbors, our Christian brothers and sisters in need, and our commitment to stand by them. As for myself, as the director of our Institute of Archaeology, being able to participate in this work in the context of my profession, in the supportive environment of our Catholic University colleagues and students, is also a fundamental definition of my life and a confirmation of my faith. And he ended with the Latin Deo gratias. Thanks be to God. Also greeting the Holy Father now and receiving the Rosary. And now we'll hear from a student. Her name is Dorotia Koshis. She's a PhD student at the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionic Services. Actually, we're going to have a musical interlude first. soloist and pianist now making their way to greet the Holy Father. And now we should be hearing from PhD student Dorothea Kosis of the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionic Sciences.
Kocsis Dorottya vagyok, a kar jelenlegi doktorandusza, egykori alap- és mesterképzéses hallgatója.
She's introducing herself, a current PhD student of the faculty, former bachelor's and master's degree student, molecular bionics, medical biotechnology, doctoral school, biology, fetus et ratio, accuracy, scientific accuracy, creativity, humility towards others and towards science, horizontal friendships among my peers, vertical friendships with my teachers and students, ability to keep an open mind and think critically, solving biological problems with the language of mathematics and computer science, awe for creation, words that are the foundation stones of the university that lives inside of me. For while I am under construction, growing both professionally and humanly within these walls, the institution grows in me and becomes an inside-out source and a place of motivation for continuous learning.
2015-ben kezdtem el egyetemi tanulmányaimat a szerzetesek
I began my undergraduate studies in 2015 in the year of consecrated life. Coming out of a high school run by a religious community, I transferred to a religious college, and I was attending Mass of a religious community. It was then during a series of events to celebrate the year of consecrated life that a booklet came into my hands, and inside of me a thought that has been with me ever since. He creates through us, so live in the present, for in each moment you are part of the creative force in a motion by which He writes His divine plan for the world. The study of this divine plan of the world is also the task of biology. As we discover more and more small details, we immerse ourselves in the complexity of God's work. I have always been attracted to this mystery of science and engineering approaches, so the choice of university and degree program was never a question for me. This is how He creates through me. While in the lab, in the mathematical reformulation of biological questions during classroom exercises, in discussions with exemplary academics, in shared lunches with other PhD students, in family connections, in honest conversations with friends, in perseverance, in laughter, in play. So, let us live in the present, for in each moment we are part of the creative force in a motion by which He writes His divine plan for the world. He creates through us. What a beautiful testimony from PhD student Dorothea Kosis, explaining her vocation and calling to explore this force, creative force, in which she has found she is part of with every one of her own movements in the present. We will now hear the speech prepared by the Holy Father for this occasion. Again, we're meeting with the academic and cultural world here at the Catholic University of Peter Pazmany. This is the last event of Pope Francis' 3-day journey to Hungary.
Cari fratelli e sorelle, buon pomeriggio. Saluto ciascuno.
Dear brothers and sisters, good afternoon. In greeting each of you, I express my appreciation for your fine words of welcome, which I will address in a minute.
Questo è l'ultimo incontro della mia visita in Ungheria.
This is the final meeting of my visit to Hungary, for which I am most grateful. Here I think of the course of the Danube, which links this country to many others, uniting not only their geography, but also their history. Culture is in some sense like a great river, It runs through and connects various areas of life and history, enabling us to navigate in this world and to embrace distant countries and lands. It nurtures the mind, satisfies the soul, and fosters the growth of society. The same word, culture, comes from the verb to cultivate. Knowledge entails a constant planting of seeds that take root in the soil of reality and bear rich fruit. 100 years ago, Romano Guardini, a great intellectual and a man of deep faith, specifically when contemplating the beauty of a magnificent lake and its surrounding hills, had a profound insight into contemporary culture. He wrote, "I have come to realize so clearly these days that there are two ways of knowing. The one sinks into a thing and its context. The aim is to penetrate, to move within, to live. The other, however, unpacks, tears apart, arranges in compartments, takes over and rules." Guardini distinguished between a gentle relational knowledge and mastery, which he described as rule by service, creation out of natural possibilities, which does not transgress set limits, and another way of knowing, which does not inspect but analyzes. It does not construct a picture of the world, but a formula, a law, that can be formulated rationally. In this second form of knowledge, materials and energy are directed to a single end, the machine. As a result, a technique of controlling living people is developing. Guardini did not demonize technology, no, which improves life and communication and brings many advantages, but he warned of the risk that it might end up controlling, if not dominating, our lives. He foresaw a great threat. Man could lose all the inner contact that we might have derived from a sense of proportion and the following of natural forms. We could become inwardly devoid of form, proportion, and direction, thereby arbitrarily fixing our goals and forcing the mastered powers of nature to bring them to fulfillment. And he left posterity with a troubling question. What will become of life if it ends up to the power of dominion? What would happen when we become subject to the imperatives of technology? A system of machines is engulfing life. This is another quotation. Can life retain its living character in this system? Can life retain its living character, the Pope asks. It's a question that is proper to ask, particularly in this place, which is a center of research into information technology and the bionic sciences. Truth to tell, much of what Guardini foresaw seems obvious to us today. We need but think of the ecological crisis in which nature is merely reacting to its exploitation at our hands. We can think of the lack of boundaries, the mentality that if you can do it, then it's okay. We can also think, too, of our tendency to concentrate not on persons and their relationships, but on the individual absorbed in his or her needs, greedy for gain and power, and on the consequent erosion of communal bonds, with the result that alienation or solitude and anxiety are no longer merely existential crises, but societal problems. How many isolated individuals are completely immersed in social media but are becoming less social themselves and often resort, as if in a vicious circle, to the consolations of technology to fill their interior emptiness. Living at a frenzied pace, prey to a ruthless capitalism, they become painfully conscious of their vulnerability in a society where outward speed goes hand in hand with inward fragility. This is the drama. In mentioning this, I don't want to engender pessimism, for that would be contrary to the faith, which I have the joy of professing, but rather to reflect
agli albori della cultura europea Omero vedeva come minacciosa e che il paradigma tecnocratico esaspera con un certo uso degli algoritmi che può rappresentare un ulteriore rischio di destabilizzazione dell'umano.
Rather, he wants to reflect on that hubris of pride and power denounced at the dawn of European culture, which the technocratic paradigm exacerbates and threatens through a certain use of algorithms to further destabilize our human ecology. In a novel that I've often quoted, The Lord of the World, by Robert Hugh Benson, we read that size is not the same as greatness, and that an instant external could not exclude a subtle internal. That book, written more than a century ago, was to some degree prophetic in its description by a future dominated by technology, where everything is made bland and uniform in the name of progress, and a new humanitarianism is proclaimed, canceling diversity, suppressing the distinctiveness of peoples, and abolishing religion. Opposed ideologies merge, and an ideological colonization prevails. As humanity, only in contact with machines, is gradually diminished and social bonds are weakened. In the technically advanced yet grim world described by Benson, with its increasingly listless and passive populace, it appears obvious that the sick should be ignored, euthanasia practiced, and languages and cultures abolished, in order to achieve a universal peace that is nothing else than an oppression based on the imposition of a consensus. As one of his characters describes it, quote, "The world seems very oddly alive. It is as if the whole thing was flushed and nervous," unquote. I recognize that I have presented a rather somber scenario, but it is precisely against this backdrop that I believe we can appreciate the uniquely important role played by scholarship and culture in the life of society. A university is, as its very name indicates, a place where thought emerges and develops in a way both open and symphonic. It's not closed or monotonous. It's open and symphonic. It is a temple, in quotes, where knowledge is set free from the constraints of accumulating and possessing, and can thus become culture, that is, the cultivation of our humanity and its foundational relationships with the transcendent, with society, with history, and with creation. As the Second Vatican Council stated, culture must be directed to the total perfection of the human person, to the good of the community and human society as a whole. It should cultivate the mind in such a way as to encourage a capacity for wonder, for understanding, for contemplation, for forming personal judgments, and cultivating a religious, moral, and social sense. You know that in in times gone by, the ability to do philosophy was recognized as a way of being able to appreciate or admire. In this regard, I very much appreciated what our speakers had to say. I think of your observation, Monsignor Rector, that in every true scientist there is something of the scribe, the priest, the prophet, and the mystic. It's true. And again, that with the help of science we seek not only to understand, but also to do what is right. That is, to build a humane and solidary civilization, a sustainable culture and environment. And with a humble heart, we can climb not only the mountain of the Lord, but also scale the heights of science.
È vero, i grandi intellettuali infatti sono umili. Il mistero della vita, d'altronde, si svela a chi sa entrare nelle piccole cose. È bello in proposito quanto ci ha detto Dorothea. Cito.
The truth, as we know, is that the greatest intellectuals are humble. The mystery of life, after all, is disclosed to those who are concerned with the little things. And Dorothea made a splendid point. As we delve into the smallest details, we find ourselves immersed in the complexity of God's work. Seen in this way, culture truly preserves and defends our humanity. It immerses us in contemplation and shapes persons who are not prey to the fashions of the moment, the fads of the moment, but solidly grounded in the reality of things, and who, as humble learners, feel the duty to remain open and communicative, never unbending and combative. True lovers of culture, in fact, never feel completely satisfied. They always experience a healthy interior restlessness. They research, they raise questions, they take risks, and continue to probe. They are able to move beyond their certitudes and plunge with humility into the mystery of life, which reveals itself to the restless, not to the complacent, is open to other cultures, and calls for the sharing of knowledge. This is the spirit of the university, and I thank you because I see it that way. Thank you. As Professor Mayor said as much when he spoke of the beauty that comes from cooperating with other educational institutions in shared research programs, and from welcoming students from other parts of the world, such as the Middle East, and in particular from war-torn Syria. It is by openness to others that we come to know ourselves better. Openness, it opens ourselves to others as a mirror so that I can know myself better. Culture accompanies us on the journey of self-knowledge. Classical thought, which is undying, reminds us of this. The famous maxim from the Temple of Delphi comes to mind: know yourself. This is the first of two guiding thoughts that I'd like to leave with you as we conclude. What do these words mean, to know thyself? They counsel us to begin to recognize our own limitations and consequently to curb the presumption of self-sufficiency. This is good for us because it proves, once we realize that we are creatures, and then we become creative. We learn to immerse ourselves in the world instead of attempting to dominate it. Technocratic thinking pursues a progress that admits no limits, yet flesh and blood human beings are fragile, and it is precisely by experiencing this that we come to realize our dependence on God and our connectiveness to others and to creation. The inscription at Delphi thus invites us to a kind of knowledge that begins with the humility of our limitations. It leads us to discover our amazing potential, which goes far beyond that of technology. Self-knowledge, in other words, bids us to keep together in a virtuous dialectic our frailty and our grandeur as human beings. Wonder before this paradox gives rise to culture. It's never satisfied, it's constantly seeking, restless yet called to community, disciplined in its finitude yet open in freedom to the infinite. I hope that you will always cultivate this exhilarating journey towards the truth. The second thought, our guiding thought that I want to leave with you has to do precisely with truth. It comes from Jesus Christ. The truth will make you free. Hungary has seen a succession of ideologies that impose themselves as truth but failed to bestow freedom. Today, too, the risk remains. I think of the shift from communism to consumerism. Common to both these isms is a false notion of freedom. Communism offered a freedom that was restricted, limited, from without, determined by someone else. Consumerism promises a hedonistic, conformist, libertine freedom that enslaves people to consumption and to material objects. How easy it is to pass from limits imposed on thinking, such as in communism, to the belief that there are no limits. As in the case of consumerism. To pass from a blind freedom to an unbridled freedom. Instead, Jesus offers a way forward. He tells us that truth frees us from our fixations and our narrowness. The key to accessing this truth is a form of knowledge that is never detached from love, a knowledge that is relational, humble, and open, concrete and communal, courageous and constructive. This is what universities are called to cultivate, and faith is called to nurture. So I take this occasion to express my hope that this university, and indeed every university, will always be a beacon of universality and freedom, a fruitful workshop of humanism, a laboratory of hope. And he concluded, I bless you from my heart, and I thank you for all that you are doing. Our Holy Father reflecting once again on a book he's quoted in the past, The Lord of the World by Robert Hugh Benson, but also quoting the words on the Temple of Delphi, Know thyself, encouraging the humble search for wisdom so that we might be led to the truth, a truth that sets us free, rather than succumbing to the various isms that only enslave us in the end. An exchange of gifts now, the rector explaining the gift he's presenting in a box here to the Holy Father. And we will be concluding as usual in these meetings with the recitation of the Our Father, after which we will receive his blessing.
Urunk Jézus Krisztus tanított imádkozni, mondjuk el közösen a mi atyánkot. Mi atyánk, aki a mennyekben vagy, szenteltessék meg a te neved, jöjjön el a te országod, legyen meg a te akaratod, amint a mennyben, úgy a földön is. Mindennapi kenyerünket add meg nekünk ma, és bocsáss meg vétkeinket, miképpen mi is megbocsájtunk az ellenünk vétkezőknek, és ne vigy minket kísértésbe, de szabadíts meg a gonosztól.
Domino Hoviscum. Sit nomen Domini benedictum, aiuterium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Qui feci in cielo e terra.
Benedica vos omnipotens Deus, Pater et Filius et Spiritus Sanctus.
Our Holy Father blessing the faculty and students here present in this meeting between himself and the world of academia and culture being held here at the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionics of the Catholic University, Peter Pazmany. We've been able to hear from the rector as well as from a student and a professor, and now others will come forward and greet the Holy Father. The curriculum developed here was done so by 30 internationally recognized researchers and professors under the leadership of Professor Tamás Roska, a member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. It's celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. Therefore, fitting that this meeting should take place here, and we leave you now with these images. We now bring to a close this live broadcast of this meeting of Pope Francis here at the Faculty of Information Technology and Bionics of the Catholic University Peter Pazmany in Budapest. Pope Francis will now go by car to Budapest's International Airport. The plane is scheduled to depart at 6 o'clock p.m. Central European Time and will arrive in Rome at about 8 o'clock p.m. I invite you to visit the Vatican News web portal, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter accounts, where you'll find live coverage of Pope Francis's events during his apostolic journey to Hungary, as well as coverage of Vatican and world news. On behalf of Vatican Media, I'd like to thank our audio technician, Adriano Vitali, and our coordinator, Jean-Charles Puzzolu, and all others who've made this broadcast possible, especially our media partners, Catholic TV at Madarshan TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks, EWTN, Uganda Catholic Television, Salt and Light Media, Shalom TV, Sunday Shalom, and Luminous Radio. Let's now pray that our Holy Father has a safe trip back to Rome, and of course, we'll be publishing the in-flight press conference shortly after he lands. Praise be Jesus Christ. Laudetur Jesus Christus.
Vegyél el, légy szíves.
Én nem gombolja szigonyba.